a new Wednesday night program. So glad you came. So my name is Jacqueline, and I'm just here to just introduce to you the format for the evening. So all of you have been here before. Is there anyone who hasn't been here before? No? So you know our procedure is usually to start everything we do with some reflection, just to settle in, to separate it out from what you've been doing today and relax and settle down for the evening. Have a meditation reflection in a couple of minutes, some instrumental music, and then we'll start with the talk. Welcome. Is that all right? So we'll do that now. Nice. So welcome again, and I'm just here to introduce to you Tim, who's going to speak this evening, who's going to take this topic up, simple. And let's imagine that this is going to take the mystery out of meditation because it's called practical meditation. And that's our aim, to make it simple. And so that everything you do is towards your accumulation of your meditation understanding. So we're going to make it simple for you. And Tim lives here. He's one of 8 residents who live here permanently. And he works during the day, some days during the week, as do the other residents, except 1 or 2 of us, for obvious reasons, you can tell, the grey hair, that we're not working now. And that's a fortune that we really do appreciate in this life. And so Tim comes with a variety background. He works in disabled employment, and he's a PR, supervisor in personal relations with people. And he's young. You're waiting for your moment? Oh, your microphone. Oh, you want this one? Okay. So, Tim, I was just introducing you as grandly as I could. But Tim's a fairly recent resident here, and so already is making his mark with retreats and classes and so on. So, you're in for a good evening this evening. Will you do with this one? Yes. Okay. Over to you, Tim.
Thank you, Jackie. I should start with I'm not quite sure it's a warning, but we are webcasting this evening. If anyone has great objections to the back of their head being broadcast to the world, an image of the back of their head, you can let us know. But otherwise, yeah. Okay, I'll start talking and we'll take it from there. I think it's only me who has the concern about being broadcast into the world. So the topic that I'd chosen is about the virtue of simplicity, or the word simple, and a surefire way to find out how much you know about a particular topic is to put yourself in a position where you have to talk to others. And all of a sudden, it becomes important that you delve your thoughts and go through and what do I really know about what it is to be simple? It's a virtue that I find very, very attractive, because my experience of the world is that we live in a time when our lives are very rich, very full, and often it seems very cluttered. Does anyone have that experience? Yeah. And so all of a sudden, the virtue of becoming simple and going back to basics becomes a very appealing one. It seems ironic that we start to look back to how people were living a few generations ago, and it holds a great appeal despite all the luxuries that we have today. And even on holidays, often people will go and just go live in a caravan for a week or a tent or what have you, just to have life very simple. One experience that I had recently, when I did have a weekend away, was to go walking with some friends. And there's a lovely walk down on the Great Ocean Road, and it took us through an orchard. And on the way back, we met the caretaker. We said, "Can we have some of the apples?" He said, "No, go over there, have some of the pears." And it was such a beautiful and I suppose a very simple experience of picking some fruit from a tree and then eating it immediately. And it left me to reflect that it's something that people have probably done for centuries upon centuries, right up until quite recently. And there's something very elegant, there's something very honest about just connecting with nature directly and then drawing that sustenance from it. But one thing about the word simple is that most often it's accompanied by another word, not specifically just one. It seems to travel in pairs. So I'd be interested to know, when you hear the word simple, are there any words that sort of jump along as a suitable companion? Sorry, where was that? Honest and simple? Yeah, simple and honest, yeah. The simple life. Yes, the simple life. Anyone else? Simple contentment. Okay, yeah. I think of the pair of, sorry? Simple mind. Pure and simple. Yeah, have you heard that? Something's pure and simple. Yeah. It's a really, it's funny because it is, a basic or a, fundamental word, but it has so many layers. It carries a lot of meaning. And there is that thing of honesty, that thing of easiness, simplicity. An image that comes to mind when I was thinking about this and preparing for tonight, I once heard the advice that we should make our mind like a Japanese dining room. So for me, I found a beautiful picture of a Japanese dining room, and it's very evocative of that. And it was so attractive because there was such a beautiful elegance to it. I didn't mean just make our mind close to the floor. That's what people sometimes think of when they see Asian dining. But it was this room within which everything served a purpose. So everything within the room was, for the process of serving dinner and eating. And it was just very beautifully put together. It was very symmetrical. So there was a balance. It was sensitive to, the inside and the outside. And so immediately you'd look at it and it was very easy on the eye. And this is one of the things in, sometimes in Asian design you'll find that it's created in such a way that when we're looking at it, our eye can just pass across the scene and just move very nicely, very easily. And if you find something out of place, you might find that when you go into a room, there's a picture, everything looks great, and there's a picture just hanging tilted in the wrong way. Yeah? And so what's your eye drawn to? Yeah? Drawn to that picture that's out of balance. Yeah? So, yeah, we have this sense of things having a state of balance and things being simple. As I thought about the word, I'm not sure it's quite a definition that came to mind, but just a little phrase about what is simple about. And what came to mind was it's about the space and the distance between things. It's about the space and the distance between things. I'd like to hold that thought, so I'll put it up where we can see it. So hold that thought. It occurred to me too that perhaps I should read what I said we were going to talk about tonight. In a hectic, complex world, we yearn for space, time, and room to breathe. The world that we create around us reflects our inner worlds. We look at the virtue of simplicity and how we can cut down, slow down, and spring clean our interior worlds. And so this idea of the virtue of simplicity and what it is to be simple. One thing is that it's not hard work. Yeah? And I think that's one of the greatest attractions when we keep things simple. It saves us from having to labour when our thinking is clear. And it also saves us from, that interior work. I think we're quite good at making simple things complicated. Yes? And it's when we put a lot of space between the initial thought, the initial conversation, the initial action, and what we want to achieve, the outcome that we're seeking. And I think perhaps one of the most difficult things that we have to do is to go back to becoming very simple. Yeah. Jackie said that I work in disability, or employment for disabled, I should say. And my work's brought me a lot of interesting different scenarios to deal with. And some of the people I work with have a great capacity to make simple things very complicated. I can think of one individual in particular, and she seems to have a great knack for just making very straightforward things quite complex and difficult. And probably a good example would be, I could imagine asking her, I'd like you to go down the shops and buy me a carton of milk. Yeah? Is that fairly straightforward? Yeah? I'd like you to go down the shops and buy me a carton of milk. And after 45 minutes away, I would call her on her phone and say, now, where are you? And it wouldn't surprise me to get an answer like, I'm at the zoo. And you say, hang on. The shops are 2 kilometres down the road. What are you doing? Well, I met these tourists, and they told me that they wanted to go to the zoo, but they didn't speak English very well, and so I wasn't sure if they understood my direction, so I thought I'd catch the tram with them and make sure that they got there. And in her mind, this would be a pretty straightforward kind of thing to do. But to do the opposite, when someone has the capacity to come in and make something very complicated quite simple, it's a very freeing, a very liberating kind of experience. And this relates very much to meditation. One of the things that I find in meditation, one of the greatest challenges I find, is that the busy mind that's been so active all day and taking in so many different things that have gone on around me. And the challenge that lies before me when I come to sit in meditation is that I need to make my thinking very, very simple. And because we're not quite used to that, it can seem to be a real challenge. Am I the only one in that boat? No? Yeah. Good to know I'm in good company. So, yeah, how do we go about becoming simple in terms of our thinking? I think, first I look at communication. Simple, this virtue of simplicity being about the distance and the space between things. So in communication, where we start is the message that we want to convey. Yeah? And then these days, we have all this fantastic technology. So we've got more technology than ever before, and so much of it is committed to communication. Whether it's emails or iPhones or text messages or Skyping or all these different things. It's all about communication. And even the internet, we have access to so much more information than we ever have before. But there is something about it, the space between the person who's talking and the person who's listening, that the more that we put these other things in the way, there is the possibility for confusion and complication. Yeah? And so even a friend of mine who has worked in business for many years, he still swears absolutely by getting on a plane and going and sitting across a table from the people that he's doing business with. And he says there is something unsurpassed about being in the company of other people, and just, there's a lot more control and there's a lot more impact in terms of how we fill the space and the distance between each other when we communicate. So I say space and distance because distance is about proximity, how close we are to each other. Yeah? And one can be the physical proximity. Yeah? So it's good to communicate, and depending on your cultural background, to sit close enough but not too close. But also the space. And the space is about the energy, the atmosphere. What is it that's between me and you when we communicate? So if I'm coming back to the virtue of simplicity and what it is to be simple, within that space there needs to be honesty. So this is the first thing. So if there's going to be clarity in communication, I need to be honest with myself. And all the threads will take us back to the practice of meditation. Because meditation is a reflective process. You're sitting down and you're looking at what's going on between your ears. Looking at your mental traffic. And part of the process, being reflective, these different things come up. And a lot of the time there's things that are out of place. They're a bit like that picture on the wall that's tilted. Yeah? It's sort of hanging to the right, and we sort of say, no, that's not right. So when I sit in meditation, you might find that a conversation that you had this morning or last week or maybe longer, that comes up. And it's telling us that, no, this is not quite right. And so in my efforts to reach that point of clarity, I have to look at that and say, okay, if I'm really honest with myself, what I put in the space between myself and the person that I wanted to communicate with is not conducive to the kind of communication that I want to have. And so it's important that we do this work to make sure that whenever we engage with others, what we bring to that space is going to be conducive to the kind of communication that we want. If we want simplicity in our communication, honesty needs to be there. Easiness, so being flexible, not being rigid. And the other thing too, I think, is, and once again we can talk about the space and the distance between things, is perhaps the space and the distance between my thoughts my feelings and how they're expressed in words. Yeah? So when the distance between what I'm thinking and what I say becomes very, very broad, there's a lot of room for all these other things to enter. One of the things I find when we're communicating with others is that once we start to make excuses, or once stories start to begin, the thing about when I'm not telling the truth is that, okay, I might have to tell one lie to cover my tracks, but then in order to cover that, I have to create more and more and more layers. Excuse me. And it ends up being very cluttered because there's all these things that I'm putting in the way, and they're really serving the purpose of hiding something. So as long as that's my motive, what's in the way, it's going to create a distance, and also the space between me and the other person is going to be quite clouded. So I need to make sure that I'm in touch with what it is that I want to say. I'm clear about that, and that there's this what's the word? I'm thinking the word congruence, but yeah, that'll do. It matches what it is that I'm thinking, what it is that I'm feeling, and how that's expressed. So for instance, if someone comes and they come to talk to you about peace, if there's a big distance between how that person presents themselves and the topic they're talking about, it's not quite as powerful. So when we have a spiritual leader who leads a life that's committed to peace and is a very peaceful person, when they start to talk about what it is to be peaceful, the distance and the space between their words and their thinking is not so far. Yeah? Alternatively, we have some people with the unenviable job of leading our communities, our countries, and they have very good speech writers, but it's evident that the lives they lead aren't particularly peaceful. So when they step forward and perhaps they're talking about peace, it doesn't carry the same resonance, it doesn't carry the same energy, because the topic that they're talking about isn't, if it's not present in their thinking, if it's not present in their consciousness, there's not going to be that strength. So, it comes back to this virtue of being simple, that I am what I say. And we know, I think, one of the reasons why public speaking is perhaps one of the greatest fears that people have is that when you sit up in this chair, you're putting yourself under the X-ray. Yeah? And yeah, so that law is at play. Am I sitting here as someone who acts in a way that is reflected in their words? So there was some training I did years ago, and it was I think it was a managerial course, and it came up with 3 very simple points, and I quite like these. And the test was, the first question was, do you know what it is that you have to do? Yeah? Okay, do you know what it is that you have to do? And the second was, do you know how to do it? Okay, so if you answer yes to those 2 questions, do you know what it is that you have to do? Do you know how to do it? The third question is, well, why haven't you done it? So this is about being simple in our actions. And personally, I think this is an area that I'd like to improve the most. Maybe that's why I chose this topic. Because there's a few laws at play. When we have an idea, something that we want to achieve, something that we want to put into action, once again, the space and the distance between the idea or the thought and bring it into action, if that's kept at a reasonable distance, and the energy, so the distance between the thought and what it is that I want to achieve, the more that I procrastinate, the energy will diminish. Yeah? And so it starts to be less than simple. As time goes on and time goes on, the energy that I need to make that thing happen, the energy required will be more and more. And so as the distance expands, the space will also become bigger. So within that space, there's room for more things to enter. So there's room for more doubts. As time goes on, there's room for more complications, room for all sorts of different things to enter that space and get in the way. So if I take the opposite approach of saying, well, okay, I want this to happen. Yeah, let me make it happen now. We have to weigh that up within reason. Sometimes time won't allow, or circumstances won't allow. But as much as possible, if the space and the distance between the idea and the action are kept brief, there'll be a strength in what it is that I do. And there was the example, most of you've all been here before, so you're probably familiar with Brahma Baba, who played a founding role in this organization, and someone that we look to really as an example. Whenever you're going to do something, you'd like to know that someone's achieved that before. You don't want to set out on a mission impossible. And he had a nice little slogan that if it needs to be done, let it be done today. If it needs to be done today, let it be done now. If somebody needs to do it, let it be me. So you can imagine with that attitude, there's a real strength in the actions that we carry out. And so when we see success in the things that we're doing, because we're starting with a good strength of energy, a real clarity, simplicity. I like the phrase, a singularity of purpose. Have you heard this phrase? Singularity of purpose. And it comes back to these questions. Do you know what it is that you have to do? Or you could say, do you know what it is that you want to do? Yeah. So if I can answer that question, do I know what it is that I have to do or what I want to do? Okay, so how clearly and how quickly I can answer that question. There's going to be strength there. There'll be that singularity of purpose. And do I know how to do it? Okay, that may not always be the case, but never to think that I'm the only one there. There's always experience, there's always the company of others. And again, if I'm clear about what it is that I want to do and I can communicate that with others, with honesty, with openness, and with that clarity, that simplicity, it's attractive to other people. Whereas, if someone's asking you to do something and after 5 minutes it's become evident that they're leading you on a wild goose chase, you sort of think, oh dear, what have I got myself into? It's not that attraction, it's not that appeal, but I'm helping someone move towards a solution. So, bearing in mind that there's always help to call upon, always that experience. And then why haven't I done it? Now, I'll do a straw poll here. Show of hands, anyone who's a procrastinator. Yeah, I like that. There's someone up the back who's, pushing the ceiling up. Yes. Yeah. It's a really good thing to do, just to have that inner conversation when I'm putting something off. What am I avoiding? Is there a fear there? Is there an uncertainty? Maybe it'll take too long. Often those things will only take 5 minutes, but we spend a lot more than 5 minutes. So we have this habit, maybe we feel comfortable creating a little bit more space and distance between me and the task. Let me feel space and distance with, a bit of time on the internet, another cup of coffee, a bit more of this, a bit more of that. Whereas, and I've been reminded recently of having the thought and following up, there is that sense of achievement. There's that sense of success. And, if you know about the law of action, we can see the input and the outcome. When the distance between the input and the outcome is, simple and it's brief, it builds faith, because it's not a month, it's not 6 months. There's this instance, this instantaneous thing of, this is what I set out to achieve, and I can see the fruit. Sometimes it's not up to me. Sometimes I can't set the time frame, but let me keep the intention. And so, that's in our actions. The other thing that I thought was appropriate is something simple in our relationships. And it's interesting that in this high-tech age when everyone's online and people are publishing, information and status, about themselves, and there'll always be that thing about your relationship status. Are you single? Are you married? And a catchphrase that's come up, in the last few years, and you say, what's your relationship status? What do you hear? It's complicated. It's complicated. Oh dear. So what does that tell us? That it's not simple. It's not simple. Does that mean that there's something lacking? What is it that I bring to that relationship? And once again, it comes back to this honesty with the self. A relationship is always of two parts, and I can always, be comfortable and say, well, my part's all good. They've got the complicated part. But really, is that going to be something that when I sit for my meditation is going to sit in my mind like the crooked picture on the wall? And perhaps it will. So I need to come back and look at what it is that I'm bringing to my relationships. And as long as I'm doing the work that makes sure that my element, my part of the relationship is as good as I can make it, it really frees me from worrying about what the other person brings. And I often think it's, we set a language in how we connect and how we communicate with others. And I'm not talking about words, I'm talking about our feelings, our thoughts, our attitudes, our values. So as much as we might say something about how I am, my actions will reveal, and this is how I am. So when I'm communicating with others, if I do that with patience, if I do that and there's room to listen to others, if I do that with acceptance, if I'm bringing virtues into my communication, that's going to be the language that supports my relationship. So once again, this space, we can say the space of meditation, put some of this space between myself and whether it's the action at the other side, the relationship, the communication. Fill that space with meditation, and it will bring that clarity. It'll bring that singularity of purpose. It's a good thing to look at my relationships and say, okay, all of these relationships are actually a reflection of me. They're all little mirrors. Yeah, and some of the relationships we look at, we're very happy to know that. Yeah, when we look at the kids, particularly when they're happy, so that's a reflection of me. Yeah, I can sit quite comfortably with that. When I look at a grumpy manager and say, oh, that's a reflection of me, I'm not so sure about that. But once again, and it happens over a long period of time, the more that my communication, the more that the language that I engage with others with becomes clear and strong, people will hesitate. They'll hesitate if I am consistently calm and peaceful and patient, it's going to take them a little while longer before they think it's okay to yell at me. Yeah? And that's just because I've been very simple and very clear in, this is my language. If you're going to communicate with me, if you're going to relate to me, this is my language. So, you need to learn how to speak it. One of the examples that I think is a great illustration is a fellow who he was put in a situation where life was in some ways very simple for him, because everything external was stripped away. And that's Mandela. So 27 years, he had a lot of time to think. There was a lot of space put between him and the things that he wanted to be close to. But he used that time to really go through and become simple and become very clear. And in doing so, his thoughts became very powerful and very strong and very resolute. He was someone who he a very deep determination, and it wasn't through pushing. It was through patience. 27 years tells us that, patience was definitely part of that. And one of the things that I think is inevitable that we, every one of us, that we have to do, is that as life goes on, there will reach a point, whether we start to do the work beforehand or whether it's our final destination, there will come a time when we have to become very, very simple. And we have to let go of all the things that we've related to. So I think a popular confusion in the world is the confusion of who I am with what I have. Yeah? So, when my identity is about what I have, personal improvement starts to become a better car, a bigger house, Maybe we start to get quite dynamic in our relationships. Yeah, we want to trade up in those as well. So this thing of who I am starts to relate more to all my commodities and roles and what have you. But when it comes back to who I am being a reflection of my character, you say your spirit, the word spirit means essence. So the essence of who I am. So, I let go, this process of letting go. And I like words, I like phrases, and this term about passing through the eye of a needle. You've heard that expression. There's a biblical phrase what's it say about, it's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to go to heaven. But taken from that, this expression of the eye of a needle, you know, and passing through the eye of a needle, it seemed to be something that's quite or nearly impossible. But, you know, the way that we relate to ourselves, and if we can relate to ourselves and see ourselves in our simplest form, I think that passing through the eye of a needle is something that's quite possible. Because in our conscious awareness, we're relating to, you know, the roles that we have, including the physical body. And when we come to sit in meditation, part of that is just letting go of the layers. Don't worry, they'll all be there when you come back from your meditation. Yeah, guaranteed. But this process of meditation is one of becoming simple and just letting those things fall aside. How quickly can I shed those things? How quickly can I, you know, let them fall away? And you know, we talk about conscious and unconscious. You know, we're conscious when we're aware of something, when it's present in our mind. Unconscious means, well, yeah, maybe it's there in our thinking, but we're just not aware of it right now. I was thinking of our pre-conscious awareness. This was the word came up, and I thought pre-conscious. And that's one thing that we really aspire to do, and that's the awareness of the soul. Because, yeah, you can see a young baby or a child is operating on conscious and unconscious levels. But even before we inhabit a body, you know, as a soul, there is a state of consciousness. And that's eternal. That always exists. And it's absolutely peaceful. And it's as simple as we will ever be. So you'll see around the place, we have this lovely picture of a point of light. And it symbolizes that. It symbolizes the soul. And so much of the effort that we make in our meditation to become simple, to work through all those things, find the crooked pictures, straighten them up. So when we look inside and look at our interior world, and we start to do the work of making it like that Japanese dining room. So as I said, the idea of a Japanese dining room is that everything within it serves a purpose. Now, would anyone say that when they look inside, when they start to sit in meditation and see what's going on in their mind, that everything going on in their mind serves a purpose? I can only think of a few people that I've met who, if they told me that that was the case, I'd probably, I wouldn't doubt them. So this is another aspect of the work that we need to do, I think, both in and outside of meditation. Yeah. So this is becoming simple in our thinking. So it means that as we go through the world, starting to be more discerning about where we let our mind go and what we get caught up in, because there is no end to all the things that are ready to occupy our mind. And the more I see what happens in the media, I do start to side with the conspiracy theorists who tell us that the media is there to really dumb us down and just to keep our mind busy doing not much. The expression bubblegum of the mind seems to be very appropriate. You know, it's almost like if you said to someone, okay, there's a population, I want you to keep them really busy thinking about not much. Okay, we can do that. You know, there's a bit of reality television. bit of gossip news, all these things. Yeah, if someone was watching from space, thinking, yeah, they're doing a really good job of keeping their people very busy, thinking about a whole lot of not much. Yeah, I could start to side with the conspiracy theorists because it seems to hold a bit of weight. But in terms of our thinking and coming back to this phrase, the space and the distance between things, the space and the distance between the thoughts that we want to have, quality thoughts, is often filled with just mental chatter. That bubblegum of the mind, keeping the mind very busy with stuff that's not going to be productive. So it's a good habit to get into, to be more discerning about what it is that I'm thinking about, what it is that I engage my mind with. And one of the aspects of, if we're thinking about things that have a resonance, have a feeling of truth to them, is that our mind becomes very calm, our mind becomes very comfortable. Yeah? When there's something that's not quite true, or there's been a lie spoken, or I've done the wrong thing, my mind becomes unsteady, my mind becomes uncomfortable, trying to find that wobbly picture and straighten it up again. And so we do that. It's important that we do that work outside of our meditation. For people who are regular here, we do have a study, and that's part of it. That the knowledge, the information that we're calling upon sits very nicely, and it's something that we can go into with a lot of depth. When you hear the word simple, and particularly in the realm of thinking, someone said a simple mind, and simple has become a euphemism for stupid. Yeah. With any virtue, it's been suggested that every virtue needs to have an opposite to balance it. So I think with the virtue, or this quality of being simple, there needs to be wisdom. And my experience has been the case that someone who has become very simple has an essential wisdom about them, because their thinking is not cluttered. Their thinking is very, very clear. And people I've found who've been meditating for a long time, their minds are not like fluffy clouds. Their minds are very focused, and their thinking is more like laser beams. Yeah, there's not that space between what's the thought and what's the decision that needs to be made. Yeah, so being very clear and being careful about our diet in terms of what we feed our mind, and finding things that are good for our mental health. So that can be in terms of what we read, in terms of what we take in, but also all the other things that are signs of a simple life. Being in touch with nature. Yeah. The space between us and nature gets a little bit too distant sometimes, and it's very clarifying. Very there's a recharging effect when we get out, and don't wait for that holiday. Don't wait for your 2 or 4 weeks a year. Maybe at lunchtime go out and sit beneath a tree. Yeah, have a little dose of holiday. Yeah, and not to once again put this great space between me and the simple life. People aspire to in their diet. People really want to go back to whole foods and organic foods and natural foods, and I think this is something that's really nice. The food that we cook here, when people come on retreat, the fact that there's not much distance between the one who's cooked it and the one, often will be the same person that serves it. It's a bit of a worry when You go to the supermarket and there's things that have come from Argentina, fresh food that's come, yeah. So you can see very practically that there's a space, a big space, and geographic space and distance between what it is that physically we're eating and how it's come to be on our plate. It sort of brings me full circle back to the experience of picking an apple from the tree and just enjoying it. The immediacy of that. I do recommend it if you have the opportunity. So the other thing in terms of being simple in our thinking is that, that's the work that we do in meditation. I don't think it's that we seek to have no thoughts, or certainly my understanding of the meditation that we practice here, it's not about having an empty mind, but it's about having fewer thoughts and the right quality of thoughts. And so what happens is that the mind in meditation will slow down. If there's anything that's uncomfortable, it will come up, and that's okay. To recognize it and put it aside. And it's a bit like going back to those managerial questions. Do you know what it is that you have to do? Step number 1, go inside. Yeah. So shed the layers, put aside the day and all the roles that I have to play and all the things that have been said and done. Come right back to the self. So step inside, get in touch with, this one here. So there's another distance and another space between me and myself. And do I know what it is that I have to do? Yeah, I have to step inside. Do I know how to do it? So it's in the realm of thought and feeling, and it takes concentration, not pressure, but concentration. So if there's interest, there will naturally be a kind of concentration. When you start talking to someone about their favorite topic, be it rock climbing or collecting train sets, when they start talking about it, I love that. It's something that I'm not particularly interested in, but there's this spark that just comes to life. Yeah, there's an energy that they talk about what it is that they're passionate about. So to create that interest, what's the mindset? What's the interior that I want to enjoy? So I need to play a part in creating that. And why isn't it that I'm doing it? Why am I not doing it? Okay, so there might be something else that needs to be addressed. That's okay. Let me speak to that. But really coming back to the awareness and the consciousness and the experience of what it is to be a soul. It's in some ways, well, it is really the simplest thing that we experience. But we've put so much between, the original consciousness. Part of being simple and part of this quality of what it is to be simple is to return to our origins. Yeah? And in this context, I'm talking about our spiritual origin. Yeah? So that comes back to experiencing myself as a soul, that simple form of conscious being of light. Now, it's been said that the soul can't be seen, but it can be understood and it can be experienced. And so this is also, a motivation that we have in meditation, to experience, the original consciousness, the original qualities of the soul. And in terms of going back to our origin, we understand that before we incarnate here, before we take a body, we exist in a realm, we exist in a space, and we share that space with the highest consciousness, the one who never becomes complicated, the one who is always simple, always pure, always peaceful. And so I need to look, if I want to connect and experience that sweetest and most peaceful consciousness, what's in the space between myself and that higher soul. Call that one God, call that one, whichever name you like. But what's in the space between me and that soul? Because depending on what is in that space between me and that soul, if it's something of virtue, if it's something of clarity, if it's something of honesty, the distance is not going to be very far. But if there's all these other things that I put in the way, and particularly if there's something that I want to hide, the distance will be greater. So I think this thing of becoming simple, it's really kind of full circle. That I started with the idea that it's probably the most complicated thing that we have to do. But I think intention counts for a lot. If there's a very clear and a very focused intention that, I can see the virtue, I can see the value of what it is to become simple. And the fruit of being simple, or experiencing that simple awareness, is one of freedom. Yeah? And I think this is one of the original qualities of the soul, that as we've accumulated the layers, we've cultivated fear in our thinking. And so we need to shed those layers so we can get back to that simplicity, get back to that purity in our consciousness. And what will happen is that there will be an experience of freedom. So, who was it? Who was it saying? Maggie McGee? Janis Joplin, what did she say? Freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. So it is that thing, putting myself in a space where, I'm prepared to let go of those things that I associate myself with, those external things, and come back to the simple and the original self, I the soul who exists beyond age. So the soul is eternal. So that means that I don't have to worry about getting too old. I can either, whichever sits more comfortably with you, you can think of yourself as an eternal ancient being, which has a nice kind of robust and a nice sense of authority about it. An eternal and ancient being, I the soul. Or you can think about yourself being the one who never grows old. Once again, the eternal and ever youthful self. And I don't think it's a contradiction. I think we're both. These are two different lenses that we can look back and experience what it is to be a soul through. So it's good to do this. So one of the outcomes of being simple and communicating in a way that is simple is that it's easily understood and it brings clarity. So I hope what I've shared with you this evening has been fairly easily understood, and I hope that it brings some clarity. So I've had my piece. Yeah. So at this point, I'll finish with a little bit of meditation. So good to put that into practice of creating the awareness, the thinking that allows us to step back, a few steps back towards becoming simple again. And so we'll have some meditation, and after that we've got a little gift for you, which is just a sweet. There's a nice custom to give people. You leave them with a little sweet. So when you go out to the world, you put something sweet in your mouth, so the next thing that you say will be very sweet. Yeah, you'll speak sweetly when you leave. So if you're prepared to hang around till after the meditation, I'll come around and I'll give you a little gift. Okay.
Who am I? Am I just this body? When I look into a mirror, what am I looking at? Is that me? Is there more to me than my physical image? My body is very real. I'm aware of its shape and size, its appearance, its state of health, how it feels sitting in this chair. But who am I? When I introduce myself to others, how do I let them know who I am? I may start with my name, my occupation, my relationships, my age, my address, and other descriptions about my life. But these are all physical things. These are all external descriptions of me. Is there more to me than this? Who am I? As I think about my identity, I am aware of my memories, my experiences in life, the things I have done and the things that have been done to me, the people who have affected me, and the places and events that have influenced me. These are all part of my inner world, my inner identity. All my experiences and interactions have shaped my personality and give rise to my thoughts and feelings. I ask myself, is there still a deeper aspect to my identity? Is there an eternal part of me that is unaffected by relationships and the world around me? What is my spiritual identity? Who am I? My spiritual identity, my eternal identity is soul. I am a soul, a being of energy. My appearance is like a tiny star, a radiant being of pure energy. a spiritual being giving life to this physical body. I imagine how I would look separate from my body. I picture myself as a being of light, like a star, a tiny star, like the stars in the night sky. The stars in the sky are enormous worlds, so far away from us that they seem like tiny sparkling points in the night sky. There is an enormous world that makes up who I am, but that is all contained within a tiny, tiny star. I imagine myself free from all the influences of my daily life for a moment, floating, free as a star, pure, vibrant, radiant energy. Away from the influences of my life, who am I? I am a being of peace. When I look at the stars in the night sky, I feel a sense of peace and tranquility. My spiritual identity is soul, and the nature of soul is peace. Not just a momentary absence of disturbances, but a very real and permanent peace. Within my nature of peace, I also find love. Not the temporary love of passing phases, but a deep sense of self-respect and compassion. I reconnect with my spiritual identity, with my true nature of peace and love. When I forget who I really am, when I'm caught up in the world and its events, the roles and responsibilities that make up my daily life, then from time to time, I'm separated from my true self, and I forget my nature of peace and love. I will remember consciously that I am a spiritual being. This is my real identity, my eternal identity. It feels good to be at peace. the more I get to know my spiritual self in solitude, the more I can be myself when there are others around. The more I appreciate who I am, the easier it is to see others for who they are. Each one of us a unique being. Each one of us worthy of being alive. Each of us a spiritual being doing our best to face the challenges of life in the physical world. I will come again soon to this inner solitude in my true identity. Gently, I sense that I'm sitting inside this body. My energy returns, and I know who I am.